All right, snare, same deal. So this is the snare drum that we had. It's going through some craziness. So it's going through these two channels. And basically what this is the snare's going through my SSL. So these are the snare drum channels. And the thing that you will notice is 15 dB, 15 dB, 15, 15, 15, 15, like these things are dimed. There's all kinds of EQ on this. And when we look at the snare going through it, there's also an insane amount of compression on a couple. And in fact, there's this too, which is one of the best parts about the SSL. The 4000 is like it clips, and the clip sounds really good on snare drum. Like this is one of the powers of the SSL is the way that it distorts. Like it sounds amazing on snare drum. And you know, one of the advantages of the console that I miss is you would probably never put 30 dB of high-end EQ into a plugin because you would look at it and the curve would be off the chart and you'd be like, man, this is absolutely crazy. But if it sounds good, it is good. You know, that's what I end up using on the SSL for snare drum a lot. So I mix and match these. And a lot of times it's just like impact, ghost notes, stuff like that. This channel right here is, come on, the uneq'd, just a straight snare drum, which is getting a tiny bit of API, well, a fair amount, which I honestly probably started with this guy's, like, you know, snare drum setting, because, you know, he's pretty good. So it sounds like on this one I am using a fair amount of snare samples. So again, I always have these samples up and running so I can just really quickly like hop through stuff and see what works and see what doesn't work. But since we wanted to push this a little more pop, it looks like we're using a little more snare sample. So here's another secret trick, this thing. This is a sample of, there was an old metronome made by Uri back in the day before they had computers, you know, crazy. And it would make a spike. And the spike was designed to go into headphones so you could kind of feel it, but it wasn't so loud on the top end that it would bleed through to the tracks. So this is a sample of the Uri metronome, and I lay that under the snare drum. Because what it does is it just adds some impact on it. I'm not using a ton of it, but it definitely adds a neat character to the sound. That actually plays into something else that I do on snare drum, which is this thing here. We call it the boombox. It's a set of plugins that I use to put a subharmonic synthesizer on the snares. So here's a snare drum. Here's the snare without the boombox. This is, it's just low end. This is a subharmonic frequency generator. That's a gate to just keep it quiet, and this is just more like low end off of it. And all it kind of does, add some low end punch to the snare drum. It's a fun little trick. Sometimes use it on kick drum too. It can be really easy to get it out of control and abusively bad and you know, whatever. But I found that it's really cool. Oh, and the other thing, I'll mess around with plugins even using the analog stuff. So as I'm looking at this, like I'm cranking a ton of low end into the snare drum, and then this is going out to the SSL, and then it's coming back in and getting a little bit of EQ with this. And since this is 3 tracks on my SSL, they get blended back down into 2 with the down mix plugin. And then, you know, I'll mess around with stuff like a clip on the snare drum, or, you know, some low end, like this is taking out stuff under 20 hertz just so it doesn't muck around. And, you know, this is something that just helps on a song like this. I'll use this to bring up ghost notes so you can hear him, especially in the verses. Kind of helps bring those ghost notes out. So, you know, I mean, there are no rules. It's whatever works. Okay, so let's continue digging into the snare drum. Obviously, I have a fair amount of samples here. Let's see what's going on with these guys. A lot. All right, so let's see. We got... This is a brush on a snare drum. Brush, which I'm using and adding even more top end to add air to the snare drum. Just kind of opens the top end up a little bit, and then let's this. This is a sample. This is a sample of an old 6-lug. What would that be? Like probably a leady. I forget what that sample is. And on this song, it's just kind of bringing a little old school flavor to the... I'm using a lot of it. And then what's this? This is... Okay, it's called Snarey Snare, so I guess it's a snare. Again, it's kind of like that ring and the rattle and like the low end thing. And this is the mid-range of it. And then this is the brush, like the high end, and then it blends in with Chris's kit. And